Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you're watching on our growing YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, football season is officially here as Carolina is preparing to take on Virginia Tech in their season opener at Lane Stadium on Friday, 6 p.m. kickoff, ESPN nationally televised game. I mean, doesn't get much bigger than that for a season opener. And obviously you got a program in Virginia Tech and a program in Carolina who fan base wise don't like each other too much. And when it comes to playing on the field, don't like each other too much as well. So big start for the Tar Heels, not an easy task. And as you guys can tell by the title and the thumbnail of this video, we're here to preview this one as Carolina gets set to open the season against the Hokies. But before we dive into it, make sure you guys head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. We've currently got a 60-day free trial running. All you have to do is sign up before this Friday, so before the Virginia Tech game, and you will get a 60-day free trial to TarHeelIllustrated.com. That takes you through most of the football season and kind of the start of basketball practice as well a few months down the line. So great opportunity to get involved and become a member of our community. 60-day free trial, no strings attached, anything like that. Just head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. You can find the link in the description below. But AJ, I mean, we've already kind of talked about it a little bit. It's a big game for a lot of different reasons. It's going to be a great atmosphere on an evening game on a Friday night up in Blacksburg. And I think it's going to be a fun one to watch, and not only on TV, but in person. And obviously you'll be there in the press box. So initial thoughts about the game before we dive into a little bit more about Virginia Tech and a little bit more about the Tar Heels.
They could be playing that team that IMG played up in Ohio, and I would be excited because I'm glad that there's a game.
I love it, man. That's a great story, by the way.
Yeah, unbelievable. And it gets better every hour. No one wants to hear a sports writer complain, but August is a long month. It's a very long month. We are so blessed and grateful that Carolina under Mack Brown gives us a ton of access. So we have an unbelievable amount of content that we've rolled out over the last month. We spoke to, I think, 29 players, every coach in the staff, position coach, the coordinators, Mack a bunch of times. We've now talked to Sam 3 times, 4 if you go back to the ACC kickoff. There's only so many ways you can write stuff building toward an opener. So now it's here, Jacob. Yep. We're just a couple of days away from Blacksburg. I actually think for this team, in spite of its youth, this is the perfect kind of game to kick off this season. You want to know what they're all about. If they were to play, next year they open with Florida A&M. No disrespect to Florida A&M, but if this team was going up against them in the opener, I don't think we'd learn a whole lot in the first game. We're going to learn so much about this team, and that's great because this coaching staff has to get as much intel as they can. And even Mack alluded to this on Monday. There's only so much you could learn in camp. Mm-hmm. He was asked some questions about, addressing certain needs and potential issues throughout fall camp. They believed that they built depth. That was one of their missions. They accomplished that. But they didn't answer any questions at wide receiver because you have to wait and see what this guy's doing games. And they didn't answer any questions at running back for the exact same reason. When people say you practice, you play like you practice, that's true to a degree, I think, in terms of focus and effort and those kind of things, but not always in performance. Some guys just show up a little more when the game is on than they do in practice. Plus, seeing how guys respond to a game, it's a different animal. You can go full throttle scrimmaging all you want, but it doesn't simulate a game, and it sure doesn't simulate what they're going to be dealing with early in Blacksburg. And I say early because if the Carolina jumps out on the Hokies, there's some apathy and a lot of negativity in the Hokie fan base right now with respect to Justin Fuente. I'm from Virginia. I went to school with a lot of people who went to Virginia Tech. A couple of them just figured Carolina's going to roll over them. So if the Tar Heels jump out early, they could take a lot of the buzz of that crowd out of the game. And Jacob, I've covered a lot of games up there, not just Carolina. I've covered Clemson up there, Florida State or Georgia Tech. I've covered a lot of games when I was with Fox, bunch of Hokie games, right? And that place, when they are in a game, I think it's the best atmosphere in the ACC, comparable to Clemson's, but in a way it's a little bit better than Clemson's because the noise is a little bit more insulated there. The place does actually bounce when they run out of the tunnel for Enter Sandman. So Carolina's got a lot of young guys on defense. And I just think that if they could get out early, take that crowd out of it, they have a much better chance, obviously, winning the game. But we're going to learn a ton. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. People on our message boards have even gotten to the point where they, up until the last couple of days, they stopped asking a lot of questions because they were just basically in wait and see mode. I can't answer a question much differently on August 20th than I did on August 10th because we don't really know much, even with all the access. Now we're going to know a lot of stuff. A million questions are going to surface from Friday night and quite a few answers as well.
Yeah, AJ, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you've obviously been covering hard throughout fall camp and preseason practice and whatnot. And you can talk about them and talk to the coaches and the players and write about them all you want. But, you've said it once. I'm going to say it again. Nothing emulates a game, especially when you consider where the Tar Heels are opening up the season this time around. So let's kind of dive into Virginia Tech a little bit before we focus on the Tar Heels right after. Picked to finish third in the ACC preseason. Picked to finish third in the Coastal in the ACC preseason media poll, which I think is a solid finish for them, especially when you look at some of the struggles they've had over the past couple seasons in particular. Finished 5-6 overall last year, 5-5 in the ACC. Actually lost 5 of their last 7 games to end the year. So not the greatest finish for the Hokies, but I know they dealt with some injuries and a lot of COVID issues in early
tons of COVID issues,
a ton of stuff. So
which is I think why to a lot of people, the ones that are angry, sort of gave Justin Fuente a little bit of a mulligan because they were missing 20 plus guys for a lot of games.
Oh yeah.
And they were I think they were 3-1 at one point, and they were still missing a lot of guys. So yeah, that's why I don't want to judge too much on last year.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. And, you look at some of the other things they had with some of the quarterbacks transferring and Burmeister having to come in, in some of the injuries he even had throughout the year and coming back towards the end. But, looking at this year's team in particular, it's a pretty talented team in terms of the guys that they return. So you're looking at the offensive side of the ball. They return a starter at every position except for 2 spots on the offensive line. You can't ask for much more than that when you're looking at who the guys are bringing back, and then return 9 starters on the defensive side of the ball as well. So this is a talented Virginia Tech team, obviously, and this is also a Virginia Tech team that has some experience, especially with guys playing significant reps in the ACC and in college football as a whole. Looking at their quarterback too, Braxton Burmeister, 3-1, as Virginia Tech starter last year, 5 games, 48 for 84. 687 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, also had 182 rushing yards on 46 carries as well. I know he was a guy that had an injury last year, kind of came back towards the end. And from what I remember and from what I've read, played some of his better football and some of his best football towards the end of the season. So I think the biggest things that stand out to me, obviously, about Virginia Tech is, putting last year aside because of the COVID issues. You got a lot of guys returning on this team, a lot of guys that have started and played significant minutes in college football. So, yeah, but by no means is this going to be a pushover. And, third in the Coastal Division, I think expectations are relatively high for this Virginia Tech team, like I mentioned, when you look at some of the struggles they've had over the past couple of years in particular.
Well, they got to replace Khalil Herbert at running back. And a lot of people around the ACC thought he was the best running back in the conference last year.
Yeah, he was good.
And I know that Carolina fans may not want to hear that, but they also believe that Virginia Tech had the best ground game in the ACC last year. Part of that was the running quarterbacks. Now, Hendon Hooker's gone. He can run okay. I think Burmeister's a kid who's really athletic. In fact, if you go back to the ACC kickoff in July, Justin Fuente kind of made some jokes about how, Burmeister's like one of their top 4 or 5 athletes on the team. And Carolina fans might remember, as I sidebar here for a minute, his dad played at Carolina back in the 90s. So it was interesting when he took the field last year. I believe he started that game in Chapel Hill. So they got to figure out what they're going to do with the ground game without Herbert. But, they're really strong. Mac talked about the left side of the offensive line. They got NFL guys there. Luke Tenuta is one of them. His dad was one of John Bunning's defensive coordinators for a while back in Carolina. John Tenuta is very well traveled, very well respected defensive mind throughout college football for the last 30 years or so. Luke is an NFL guy. They've got some NFL guys in their line. Trey Turner out wide is a really, really good player. He's a Greensboro guy. Mac also mentioned some of the studs that Virginia Tech has that are North Carolina kids.
Yeah, he talked a lot about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're all over the place. And let's not forget that Dax Hollifield was one of the big targets for Larry Fedora's program. And when Larry missed on getting Dax, I think that was among the 12 or 14 nails in the coffin. I think that was one of them. Seriously, I think that was a huge negative for Larry not getting him. But we don't want to go back to the Dax Hollifield thing. This team has got some parts. And I think, being picked to finish third, even with the negativity, part of that's just the Virginia Tech factor. Mm-hmm. If you look at the Coastal Division, Miami hasn't been Miami for a long time. And I know Virginia Tech hasn't exactly been Virginia Tech under Fuente, but they did have some successes for first couple of years. And the name Virginia Tech is a football name. It carries some cachet still. And I think that when people look at the Hokies, when they're okay, they usually caution high instead of caution low. I think we're seeing a lot of people in North Carolina caution low right now because you gotta prove that you belong there.
Exactly.
Just anointing them at number 9 or number 10, as Mac was talking about again on Monday, you got to prove it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of stuff on offense for the Hokies, but they do need to find a running game. I'm not an expert on Virginia Tech. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what they're going to do. I do think the element of the quarterback running will help. That has given Carolina problems in the past. In fact, the last 2 years, I believe that Virginia Tech quarterbacks have run for like 230 yards against Carolina. Mm-hmm. Now, 2 of them are gone. One of them, another one, the one that beat them in the 6 overtimes 2 years ago, he's gone as well. But Burmeister's really, really smart, really athletic. He's a guy that could give Carolina fits. They're going to have to be very disciplined. And I wouldn't be surprised if Virginia Tech does a ton of wrinkles at him early with the run game, but the corners have to cover. Turner's a nice player. James Mitchell's a really good tight end. A lot of people think he's probably the best tight end in the league. Yeah. In fact, it probably is the best tight end in the league. He was a potential NFL guy. So there are weapons there. You've got enough guys up front blocking that have experience. The Carolina defense, if people are expecting all this talent and depth, these dudes in depth on defense to pitch a shutout, they're going to be mistaken because Virginia Tech will move the ball. They'll have some long drives. They're going to get into the end zone. Carolina's just going to have to maybe force a couple turnovers in this game if it's going to position itself for a convincing victory. And I think any victory is a good win Friday night. But I'm kind of speaking to what I'm hearing a lot of Carolina fans think. I think that there are a lot of people that are taking Virginia Tech way too lightly right now. And they think, oh, Herbert's gone. And, oh, Justin Hamilton, the new defensive coordinator, they struggle on defense. They're not the Hokies anymore that they were before. Fuente's going to get fired. Well, there's going to be a lot of emotional energy this program pours into the game Friday night. Full stadium finally. The place is going to be rocking. I think they're going to give Carolina everything that they have on offense and on defense. And I know you want to get into defense now as well.
Yeah, definitely. And real quickly as well, this is a game, we've talked a lot off camera about this. I don't know if I've talked about it on camera as well, but this is a game that I think a lot of people around the country, even some Carolina fans, maybe a month or two ago, especially, it kind of overlooked when the schedule came out. I think as it's gotten closer from what we've kind of heard and discussed on the message boards and everything, I think fans have started to say, okay, yeah, this is actually a tough place to go. This is a tough game to start out the season, especially when you consider Friday night nationally televised game, sold out stadium there in Blacksburg. So, I mean, it's going to be a raucous atmosphere. And like I've said, man, I can't stress this enough. This is 2 teams, 2 programs, 2 fan bases that do not like each other. No. And that definitely adds into the kind of the spectacle of the competition that the game will bring as well. So.
I think one of the dangers that I've been able to gauge from talking to a lot of Carolina fans, whether it's through texting or emails or DMs or to actually talking to them, is that so much emphasis, so much has been put into the whole Enter Sandman thing. And it's the greatest entry. That and Clemson, 2 greatest entries.
Yeah, it's electric.
I love it. I remember when they even did it in the ACC championship game against Florida State and at the Panther Stadium in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And it was just cool then. And it wasn't the same thing that it is at Lane Stadium. It's a special, special thing. I absolutely love it. But too much is being put into that because to steal a term that every athlete uses these days, at the end of the day, it's just football. You've got to strap it up and play the game. Yeah. And I think that even if Virginia Tech walked onto the field holding fans to no pageantry or anything like that, this would still be a challenging game for the Tar Heels. Push aside Enter Sandman because that's not going to win or lose the game for either team. How Carolina handles adjusting throughout the course of the game, and when they get a feel for what Tech's going to do with its ground game and how they quickly adjust and how that depth, when they do go into the depth and place them young guys on defense, can they step up and make plays? How much of a drop-off is there? Those are the things that are going to determine whether or not Carolina wins this game. They could end up winning by 4 touchdowns, and Virginia Tech could be a blithering mess. Mm-hmm. Some Hokie friends I talked to who know football well. They've been going to games for years. They believe that the program is going to crumble this year and Fuente is going to get canned. And that's precisely why I think there's going to be so much emotion poured into it. Because I think even if it's not something being discussed around the program, because kids usually don't talk about that stuff, they all know it. They know that this is an extraordinarily important game for all the kids, all the people in that program, and for that fan base right now. And that it's Carolina just adds to it. And that Carolina's a top 10 team adds to it even more. And they've got a Heisman Trophy at quarterback. There's a whole lot that Virginia Tech's able to use to get ginned up for this thing. Carolina's going to get the brunt of all of that early in this game.
Definitely, 100%, AJ. Let's move on to the Tar Heels real quickly and kind of talk about what they need to do to win, and then we'll wrap this one up so we don't keep it too long. High expectations for this Carolina team. We always talk about this for people that have followed us for a long time and listened to our podcast or read AJ's and my writing over the past couple of years. We always judge the football team and the basketball team off their expectations, what they tell us. Stated mission. That's the word I was looking for. That's how we judge these teams. Carolina's stated mission is obviously to win the Coastal Division, compete for an ACC title, and compete at that national stage. That's what they want to do. That's what they've said they want to do.
CFP.
And that's the goals. Yeah, CFP. That's the goals for this team. So that's how we're going to judge them. And obviously, Virginia Tech, Friday night opening game, obviously is a big spectacle. It's obviously a huge game for both teams and is going to be a tough one for the Tar Heels and a tough one for the Hokies as well. But when you're judging a team off its stated mission being what it is, this is a game that you expect Carolina to win if they want to reach those goals. Obviously, you could lose to Virginia Tech, and it doesn't end your season. I think Mac Brown said the same thing. It doesn't. It's not like you lose and it's over, but it definitely puts a little bit of a dent in it and could make it a little bit more difficult for Carolina to reach that stated mission. But I think looking at this team, we've talked a ton about the offense. We've talked a ton about the defense. So we're not going to dive into crazy specifics about everything. But I think this is a Carolina team on offense that can go up there and score, and this Virginia Tech defense can go, and score on anybody. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that when you look at Sam Howell and a lot of the talent that they have, not only in the wide receiver and running back room, but also returning all 5 starters on the offensive line as well. Defensively, it's a young team. Defensively, there's also a lot of guys that have played a lot of reps as well. So there's kind of a healthy mixture. And like we've been saying, the phrase that we've been coining and trying to trademark, dudes in depth, is really something that really sums up this defense as a whole. So I think, you're looking at this Carolina team on paper, this is a team that, I don't think anybody would argue is more talented than Virginia Tech and has some better players at specific skill positions in particular that gives them the advantage. But looking at this Carolina team in particular, AJ, let's start with the offensive side of the ball and then we'll flip to the defense. What are you kind of expecting and what does Carolina have to do on the offensive side of the ball to come out with a win on Friday?
Well, let's remember that to understand Virginia Tech, and again, I don't want people shouldn't judge them too much on last year. Justin Hamilton, first-year defensive coordinator for the Hokies last year. I mean, they didn't get to practice the way they needed to. They were down a lot of guys. They never just got any traction. So he deserves a mulligan from last year as well. They have some guys on defense. Jordan Williams transferred in from Clemson. He wasn't a star at Clemson, or he would have stayed at Clemson, but he has started some games. He's been involved. He's had some success in the field, and I think he's someone that will help this defense. They have some other guys. What's his name? Amari Barno, I think his name, defensive lineman. Josh Azudu referenced him the other day about his length, leverage, ability to read, react. He can rush the passer. He can play the gaps and all that kind of stuff. They have some talent in the secondary at Virginia Tech, and they can be physical in the secondary as well. So Carolina is going to have to be really good on offense. I don't think Carolina has to be great running the ball in this game. I think in this game, from a one snapshot scenario, Sam has to be great.
Yeah.
If Sam is great and Carolina puts a Band-Aid on whatever kind of running game they have, and they win, advance, survive, and advance type mentality, and they get to next week, they can fix things. I think they just got to go up there and get a win. And it might require that Sam throw for 400 yards. And I don't think that's an issue if he has to throw for 400 yards, as long as guys get open. Carolina still has question marks at wide receiver and running back, Jacob, until we see guys do in games what we think that they can do based on their talent, potential, and what we're hearing from the program. We still have to see it in games. Josh Downs should be an awesome player this year. Emory Simmons, the uptick is very high on him at receiver, but is he really that guy? I wrote about him as one of the 3 breakout players. And I said, look, he's a guy that can get over the top of the defense. He can also get you that diving 8-yard catch over the middle to move the chains. Mm-hmm. He could do those kinds of things. He's a smart guy. He runs good routes. But is he a consistently explosive, consistently productive guy? We'll have to see it. They need that. They just don't need guys that are really good at a few routes and then they disappear for some routes. That's going to cause problems for this team. Definitely. They need to. Antoine Green was so ballyhooed when he came in. He suffered that terrible injury. It's taken him a while to get back to where he thinks he's Antoine Green again. I think everybody believes that that's the case now. So can he get over the top of the defense? How productive can he be? What does Justin Olsen do? We've heard his name a lot. They're not going to have Bo Corrales in this game, who would be absolutely the kind of guy you want to have out there because he can run pretty much every route and make the tough catches as well. I think they're going to throw to the tight end more this year. How productive is Garrett Walston? How do they use him? If the running game is struggling, do they use that little dump to the tight end every once in a while to sort of, to kind of help that part of the game some? We're going to find out. And that's what I love so much about openers, especially openers like this. And let's remember, Jacob, this program historically has struggled in openers like this. They beat South Carolina a couple of years ago. South Carolina stunk. Not taking anything away from the Tar Heels, but South Carolina was terrible. And it was a come-from-behind win for Carolina with a true freshman, his first game at quarterback. They unleashed Sam a little bit late. So it was an outstanding win for the program. This is different. Virginia Tech's much better. It'll be a much different, more difficult environment. And I think that, Carolina has pressure. Whether they want to admit it or not, they do have pressure going into this game. And Sam has some too. Sam's really good at deflecting stuff. I mean, he is as professional a college player as I've covered in basketball or football, probably since Russell Wilson. And I've referenced Russell before when talking about Sam. And so Sam will probably handle that stuff well. But, man, if they're struggling, guys aren't getting open early, it's going to be really interesting to see how this team handles that.
Yeah. So just to clarify, your biggest question mark on the offensive side of the ball, I know you mentioned the wide receivers and running backs being the two, but would you lean more towards running back because you do have a guy like Sam Howell back there throwing to the guys?
Yeah, because, Sam's not going to be a lead blocker either.
Yeah.
So, the RPO game here, a lot of times the RPO stuff last year was, say, like against Duke. Sam would just choose. They would want to run the ball in the end zone or throw it in the end zone in this play or get 12 yards. Mm-hmm. The RPO is going to be more important because if they're not running very well, it's a tougher sell, and they're so RPO heavy. It'll be interesting to see, how much we've talked about the freedom that Sam has to maybe change some stuff at the line of scrimmage or in game planning with Phil Longo. How much freedom do they give him to maybe change stuff in the middle of the series because something's not working? Mm-hmm. And he says, well, if something's not working, we just toss it out. You just can't toss out the ground game. So, and maybe they run the ball really well. Ty Chandler's had a lot of success in the past. The environment's not going to affect him. But Caleb Hood's a true freshman. He's the number 2 guy. And then you got DJ Jones, who we thought all along was going to be in the mix of one of the 3. Very talented. I think that, I'm really interested to see what he does in his reps Friday night because I think that there's a real high end for DJ Jones. He's just got to stay healthy, and he's got to be consistent with knowing what to do. And so we could see an interesting player break out a little bit on Friday night with him because he would have started the Orange Bowl if he was healthy. Mm. And it would have been interesting to see what he would have done that night because I think that could have been a nice springboard into this year like it was for Asante, like it was for Josh Downs. But it wasn't that for him. So the question mark still looms over him.
Definitely. Let's flip to the defensive side real quick before we wrap this one up. We've talked a ton about the defense throughout the podcast we've done really since spring ball and how things have kind of shaping up. I know we finally got the depth chart a couple of days ago. A few interesting things that, potentially stood. I know Chris Collins starting at one of the outside linebacker positions over Tyron Hopper was one thing that was a little bit surprising in some ways, but I mean, credit to Chris Collins and the stuff he's been able to do in preseason leading up to this point, because I know Jay Bateman spoke very, very highly of him in his press conference a couple of days ago. So focusing on the defense, what does Carolina need to do defensively to stop the Hokies and ultimately win the game?
Well, they got to be disciplined because, like I said, I think the Hokies are going to throw stuff at them. There's going to be eye candy. There's going to be some misdirection. They'll try to run power, especially on that left side. And we've talked a lot about dudes in depth, but when you put your best 11 on the field, where's the high end? Mm-hmm. So you could play 28 guys on defense. And if there's not much of a drop off, in some respects, that's great because you are who you are, no matter who you put on the field for the most part, right? But also, if there's not much of a drop off, you got to wonder how good collectively the frontline guys are, the first teamers are. I actually think they're pretty good. And I do think there will be a little bit of a drop off as we've gotten closer to game time. Miles Murphy, Tamari Fox, and Ray Vahasek. I think that there is a gap between them and the next level of defensive line. Seeing that Chris Collins is listed first over Tyron Hopper, he's a better athlete, a little bit longer, a little rangier, better athlete, really smart kid. Hopper's a college graduate. You got a lot of smart guys there, right? And I just think that that's Chris Collins finally hitting a point where people thought he would, the kind of player people thought he would be when he came from Richmond. He's a four-star kid from Richmond, Virginia. And he was thrown to the wolves early on as a true freshman and struggled. Just a lot like William Barnes.
Yeah.
And really struggled and then kind of pulled back a little bit. And I think he lost some confidence. I think he wasn't physically ready to get those kind of reps. And now here he is emerging, just like we've seen William Barnes emerge on the offensive line in the last 6 months. And I think it's a really good sign. I don't think he got the starting nod over Hopper because Hopper isn't that good. I think he got the starting nod over Hopper because Chris Collins has developed into the player that people thought he would become when he signed with Carolina a few years ago. So I think that's my take on that. But really, again, when you look at the depth chart, when you look at the number of guys that they have out there and how far they went down like a defensive line, they got 8 guys listed. One of them is not Clyde Pender, who was a 4-star guy. And what have I said a lot in the last month, Jacob? The program has already reached a point now where they can absorb some 4-star guys not yet being 4-star guys. Pender was a 4-star guy, and he is only his second year, so people shouldn't rush him. Everyone's got a different timetable. But what this tells me is another example that they've just got a lot of depth there. The staff took a chance on Kevin Hester, basketball player, who only played 1 year. They took a little bit of a chance on Christian Varner as well. And those guys are developing. They're coaching them up. They had 4-star potential, but they hadn't been 4-star guys just yet, especially Hester, who played 1 year of high school. So it tells me that they brought guys in, they coach them up, and they don't care what your star ranking is. If you're the dude who should be on the field, or if you're the dude who should be in that spot in the pecking order, that's where you're going to be. So lots of dudes in depth. They can absorb the 4-star guys. I think they're going to be fresher throughout the game, fresher late in the first half, which has been an issue for this team the last 2 years. And because of that, they're going to be better. I just don't know if they're ever going to be great at any one time. I think they could be great in sequences. I think at the corner, perhaps they could be great. And I don't throw the word great around very often. You got Grimes at one corner, McMichael, Duck battling on the other one, possibly 3 NFL guys there. Mm-hmm. And they're really strong at safety with their depth. And I think Nichols in pretty good shape too with Chapman, and DeAndre Boykins is a true freshman, but definitely really talented kid. And I don't know how much they're going to use that. It's going to be interesting to see how, because they're more talented, how often they're just in their base defense. Mm-hmm. And they don't run a lot of bells and whistles and trickery. They just play straight up base defense because they might be talented enough to do that. It'll be interesting to see how Bateman handles that as we go through the game.
Definitely, AJ. I think it's good stuff, man. It's going to be an interesting one. I know for you got to be excited to get back up to Blacksburg too, and not only actually go to a game in person, which I know we've obviously done over the past couple of years, but actually see some people in the stands.
Dude. Last year, games in person were so weird.
That was weird.
I thought it was interesting when Phil Longer talked Monday about how surreal the Syracuse game was, because it was the most bizarre experience I've ever had in my sports career in media. And I'm in my 26th year now. And basketball was weird. The basketball game against Kentucky and Cleveland was truly bizarre. Mm-hmm. There were less than 100 people in the building, including teams, media, personnel, that kind of thing. But Syracuse was really weird. Boston College was really weird. The first game, I think, where they allowed some fans was at home against Virginia Tech, and there were like 3,000 people in a 55,000 seat stadium. So I'm looking forward to some normalcy. Still got to wear a mask in the press box, and it's not a full press box yet, but hey, baby steps, man. We're getting closer. And I'm just glad fans can be there. I'm glad that these players get to experience something normal, even if they have to wear a mask 20 minutes after the game and get tested 40 times a week and all that kind of crap. Yeah. But at least we're getting closer to being normal.
Yeah, and at least there's people in the stands and a sold-out crowd, like I said, in Lane Stadium on Friday night. That's gonna be refreshing when you consider these fans really haven't been able to see these, haven't been in full capacity at least in over a year. Expect a pretty raucous crowd up there. I know it was going to be like that anyway, but I think when you add that element in, it's going to be a wild atmosphere in Lane Stadium on Friday night.
And a reminder, we will post our staff picks on Thursday night because it's a Friday game. We usually post them on Friday morning when there's a Saturday afternoon game, because we go about 36 hours. But since it's a Friday night game, We're going to post the staff picks on our site on Thursday night. And I haven't actually done my pick yet. You guys have all done yours. I haven't even looked at them yet. I haven't done mine, but I will pick Carolina to win this game.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be a blowout. It could be fairly high scoring. I'm thinking sort of in the 35, 24, 38, 27 range, something like that.
Yeah, I think I said 28, 24, 28, 21. I think Carolina could probably not. I know they definitely can score more points than that. But just season opener and everything, I think it stays within that kind of 7-point threshold.
Err on the side of caution when your picks are made public, my friend.
Exactly, man. I like to throw it out there. I think Carolina wins. I think it's a close game nonetheless. It's kind of the gist of my prediction. But
would you be surprised if the Tar Heels lose?
No, not at all. I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina loses at all. I think there's a few different reasons. I think season opener. I think that always. It's tough, especially when you consider where Carolina is playing their season opener and who it's against. Also, I think this is a team who expectations are very high for, and there's a lot of young guys on this team as well. This is a team that, whether you believe it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, hasn't really competed at that level they want to compete at yet. I know they had a good season last year, but they still finished 8-4. They want to be better than that. Expectations are higher for them for that. So can Carolina meet those expectations from minute one, from game 1 to game 12? We're going to have to see. But I think those real factors is just what kind of makes me think that they could potentially lose. It's just the atmosphere of the team and, what the expectations are.
Let me just remind Carolina fans, as I said a few minutes ago, Tar Heels have been in this situation in football a lot over time. They bumped their head on the national ceiling a lot, but the program has never broken through. I think that there's a strong possibility that under the current regime's guidance, the program will break through. But it has to go up and win a game like this. And this is a very important game for building the fiber for later in the year. The club that went down and lost in Tallahassee last year didn't really have the fiber yet. They just like, boom, they woke up one day and they're number 5. They didn't know how to handle it. Yeah. They never should have been ranked that high. Part of the process is learning how to be that team. So they may stumble a couple of times. They may stumble Friday night. And that might be part of their process. I know people get annoyed when we use that word process a lot, but keep in mind, this is just part 1 of building to whatever this club can become. So I would temper having huge expectations for Friday night. It's going to be a very challenging game. This would be a challenging game for anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly for North Carolina, because as you said earlier, those people don't like Carolina. They think they're the football school. They don't want this basketball school and baby blue going up there and being the team in the Coastal Division. They don't want that at all. There's a lot of venom that's going to be spewed up there. So that's why I love this challenge for the Tar Heels. I love this opener. I absolutely love this. This to me, it's as cool as the Georgia game in 2016 in a lot of ways. Yeah. But in a way, it's cooler because it's a conference game. It's a place the Tar Heels have won twice since Virginia Tech joined the ACC. One was on a late field goal by Casey Barth, and the other one was the team that actually went to the Coastal or won the Coastal and played in the ACC title game. They had to win in overtime up there against a mediocre Beamer team. I think it was Beamer's last team.
It was, yeah.
His last home game. So nothing comes easy in Blacksburg for Carolina, and I doubt it's going to be super easy Friday.
No, definitely not. Going to be a fun one, though, regardless, man. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I know Carolina fans are excited. The expectations are extremely high for this team, and the road to their, where they want to be and what they want to accomplish this year starts on Friday. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, and we'll see how things go for the Tar Heels. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones in our first preview podcast of the season. We'll obviously be rolling these out before every game. I hope you guys have enjoyed this one, just having a little chat about the teams and what we expect on Friday night. So, yeah, going to be a fun one, going to be a fun season to cover as well. And like I've said a few times, it gets started with a tough game on Friday night. So, as always, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well so you know every time we upload. We'll have all the interviews after the game, everything leading up to the game as well. So if you want to see that, check out our website, TarHeelIllustrated.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. And as always, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.